Irdas. Irdas is another book from Dragonlance world. It is fairly early into the Dragonlance Kryn world, and it is about Irdas. Specifically, it's about ogre civilization, because in Dragonlance series, the ogres were the at the beginning of the world. The ogres were the favorites of the gods, and not elves, not humans, not dwarves, but ogres. And it is about their civilization before they're fallen into complete evil and degeneracy. So we see the civilization of ogres. When they probably span through a whole Kryn world, we because in this book we only see situation in one specific country, but I would assume that ogres were ruling whole planet. And this story is about an ogre lord who is experimenting with not having slaves, because in this period of times elves existed, but they were too weak to be slaves or at least this is what ogres thought, and most of the slaves were humans, and this one specific lord is trying to change their ways. So we see that even though the ogres were not, they were maybe this is the apex even of their culture. We also see that they were evil even though before they fallen, because they have slaves to do all their labor and their hard work and hard tasks, and one of these lords is trying to do something different, and from this lord and people who supported him, we have this Irdas civilization, these Irdas people, because at some point at time, their civilization is falling into complete darkness. Their appearance even will change. They will be strong. They will be tall, but they will be extremely ugly, brutal, and stupid and dumb. But right now in this book, when we see this process, they are still very beautiful, very civilized, long, tall, but with knowledge, with magic, probably magic stronger even than elves and humans. So we see that this civilization is at the cusp of falling into something bad, but there is a, some group with this lord who wants, and they want a different life for them. And of course, this is the conflict. This is almost like a war, a civil war between ogres, because most of them think that this lord is insane, that he lost his mind to free his slaves, or to give them a choice to labor or not to labor, and so on. And of course, other ogres are terrified that this idea can spread to whole ogres empire. But unfortunately, so we see from this book how Irdas, especially in Dragons of the Flame of Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss, when we saw this small civilization of Irdas living on Smile magical islands, and they were even using their magic to hidden their true identity of being a descendants of ogres, of these noble people of the past. But the problem with Irdas, and I see that with most of the books, especially those written in deep past, in deep early ages of Kryn, is that they are extremely simple. They are extremely simple to the point of being boring, dull, and very naive. Very naive, very infantile, extremely simple. So, for example, Right now, when I'm 40, I think that even the first books, the best books of Dragonlance, written by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, so Dragons of the Autumn, Dragons of the Winter, and Dragons of the Spring, and the trilogy of Caramon Mayere and Raistlin Mayere, these books are simple, but they are also interesting. The characters, even though they are simple for someone like 40 years old, they are still interesting to some extent. And those earlier books, or those books later written but being narrated to the ancient past, are extremely simple and extremely boring because they are very naive, very banal. Because, for example, this author, I don't remember, it was she probably, when she wants to written a book about the greatest civilization, uh, who the greatest civilization and the first civilization of the Kryn, it should have an epic story. It should have an epic story. It should have a narration to show us the great cities, their great buildings, their great poems, their great art, their great urban expansion, and so on. And in this book, it's so small in frame. It's only showing us one big, let's say, farm, or one big noble house, and that's almost all. So it's really, really small, to the extent of what should we expect from the ogre civilization. And the characters are extremely silly, extremely boring, extremely naive. Uh, uh, I would never allow myself to write such a simple, banal books, especially when I want to describe a very important aspect of Kryn, because the importance of the Kryn was that the first civilization, the greatest civilization, the most advanced civilization, was ogres, but they almost all, at some point in time, they almost all turned toward Taxis, the goddess of evil, and they were cast into these abominations, the caricature of their own earlier lives, to being extremely ugly, but also extremely aggressive, extremely simple, and very not very intellectual in their all scope of things. And here we see that, okay, there are ogres, they are intelligent, they can use magic, they are very civilized, but we only see that they don't allow one lord to abandon the old ways of having human slaves, and that's basically all. And I think that the destruction and the downfall of because here we didn't see we don't see the downfall, we don't see the destruction of ogre civilization. It will probably will happen at some point in time after the rebellion, but but I think the book is too simple to show us such complicated issue, because I think the issue of ogres, of them being the greatest, and they were living alongside elves and humans, but they should show us that the civilization even of elves was too simple, was still not developed properly, but ogres did. The ogres were like extremely evolved, uh, let's say, elves of Tolkien world, because, for example, in Tolkien world, elves are the most advanced race of all, maybe not the mightiest, but they are still mightiest than people and humans. But they are also comparing to the Maiar of Arda, so to the lesser gods of Arda. So we should see in Kryn that ogres were so powerful that even, for example, gods of Kryn, like Taxis or even the good gods of Kryn, could use them, but they could also cooperate with them. And the ogres were such intelligent creatures that they were above all. They were the chosen ones of the gods. And from this book, unfortunately, we don't see such a thing. We don't see such a thing. It's a very short story, mm, maybe 300 pages, but quite small pages. Uh, it's really too simple, especially if we compare these books, and the same can be told about the earlier books, for example, dragons, how dragons were created. The same problems: too naive, too banal, too infantile, too fast. And when we, for example, see the first books of Dragon Age world, written by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss, we see that the story in these three tomes was epic, was absolutely epic. So we begin in Dragons of the Autumn, then Winter, then Spring. It is epic story because characters are very well written, bad ones and good ones, and the story is not as simple as we should expect, and the characters have their own inner charisma. And here in this story of Irdas, we don't have any of these things, unfortunately. Let me know in the comments what do you think about the story of ogres, their civilization in book of Dragonlance, Irdas.